So we're doing part 2 of magnetizing the Stormraven, and unfortunately GW has made this as hard as possible to try and magnetize these turret weapons. I'm going to give you the design of how this turret is set up. What you got here is this rod goes through with these square tips, and this is supposed to stay loose so that the weapons can go up and down, pivot up and down. And then what you have is a square hole on the weapon that goes in here. Problem is, there's just not enough meat on here to use a magnet. Even a 1/16 is just going to shred this. You're not going to get any way to hold it in place, so that by the time you get a magnet in there, the weapon's just going to spin freely, and that's not going to get you what you want. So what we're going to have to do, so I spent a lot of time on this trying to figure out how to get this done. And so what I did was I glued the shaft in place, and I ended up using, let's go over this, I used a 1/16 inch magnet in here, 1/8 inch magnets in the weapons, and then I used a 1/16 brass rod. I used brass rod instead of paperclip because it's a lot stronger, and so that's going to prevent the weapon from spinning freely while it's mounted. I'm going to grab the glass cannon here, and a magnet and a hole. Just kind of stays in place. And then we also have to drop the part. Magnetize this little piece that goes on here. So that's what we have to accomplish. So I'm going to start. I'm sure there's someone who can figure out a better way. If you can get maybe smaller than 1/16 inch magnet and drill a hole in here, and then before you assemble the weapons, put a magnet on the inside, opposite polarity, it should probably stay. But the problem is you have to do it before you assemble the weapons, and if you don't, well then you're kind of out of luck here. And I don't have anything smaller than 1/16 anyway, so I'm going to have to do it this way. So I'm just going to cut the square peg off. And we take my 1/16 inch drill bit right in the middle. I'm going to drill it pretty deep because I'm going to put in a 1/16 inch deep magnet. So I'm in a pretty good size hole here. Oops. And what I'm going to do is right below that, I'm going to drill in another hole for the peg. There's going to be easier ways to make it, and I get that a little off center, so it's going to, I'm actually going to widen the hole a little bit. So I'm going to closer to the middle. So a little tiny bit off. Dang it. Anyway, it's going to take a lot of super glue. And I've already got 1/8 inch hole drilled into the salt cannon for that side, so now I'm going to put on some magnets and grab and make it the same as the other side. There's a lot of gap in there, so we're going to put some extra glue in and let it dry thoroughly before to put anything on it. What I'm going to do is glue in a little piece of brass rod here. It's a little harder. Whoops. Brass rod is a little harder to cut than paper clips, so So that's the end of the modifications to the turret. And file down the edges here on this thing, so we get a smoother transition to the holes we end up putting in the weapons. Now the best part is if you don't get the hole exactly lined up that goes to the weapon, don't worry about it, because you can just kind of cut it into a slot, and it doesn't have to be perfect. The magnet will hold it in place for the most part. And the pin is just there to keep it from spinning wildly while you're trying to play with it. Of course, then there's always the white glue trick too you can use to hold the weapon still. Okay, so there's the modified turret. So now we're going to put in some 1/8 inch magnets into the guns. I prefer using the bigger magnets just so I get the maximum amount of hold. You want to make sure they're flush. If they're not flush, they're not going to fit right. Okay, then switch over to my 1/8 inch drill bit. Yeah, it's kind of messy. I kind of get disorganized when I'm doing it, so we can put an 1/8 inch hole in the plasma cannon. And the las cannon, I kind of get a little off base here. Okay. There. So there's weapons, magnets, and all the weapons. Now we're going to go back to the 1/16 inch drill bit and put in the pinholes. And actually, you could even go a step bigger than 1/16 if you wanted to, just to make sure you get some good clearance on that peg hole. So the only reason it's there is just to keep it from spinning around wildly. Let's see what happens. About there. Got through. It's not too bad. I might actually step it up. Plasma cannon. Oh, that one's a little bit off. Darn it. And las cannon. This one, unfortunately, is a little bit too far forward. So I'm going to enlarge it. Okay, so now that I've avoided that little disaster of putting the magnets in wrong, which happens, everyone makes mistakes, right? So now all the weapons fit normally. So we got assault cannons, snaps right on there, and it doesn't move. It moves a little bit, but not enough to matter. And we got, oops, sorry, plasma cannon. And the las cannon. It's a little loose, but it's definitely not going anywhere. That's cannons. Okay. So now the next step is to magnetize on a little piece. Goes on the outside. This little piece right here. So we need to grab our weapons. Back to the 1/8 inch drill bit. Stuff everywhere here. It's okay, that's what happens in the middle of a project. These things get a little messy. So, 1/8 inch drill bit, and we're going to go right in the middle of the two slots right here, or at least as close to the middle as we can. And we drill through. Then we're going to take our thin 1/8 inch magnets, the 1/8 by 1/16, and when we glue them down in a little bit, we're going to recess them. Might want to make it so they're not fighting the magnets on the other side. These don't have to be perfect. In fact, they probably won't be. Hardly any glue in there. Perfect, and it's recessed in there a little bit. The other ones. Okay. There's the outside. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a, let's see how close it is. If they're lined up really well, you can use the same 1/8 inch magnet to hold them on. The magnets fighting each other. It's funny. We can find in here. Pretty close. What I'm going to do is take a 1/8 inch magnet. Yeah. Just glue that on wherever it happens to land. Now we have to let that dry before we take it off. But when you take it off, it should fit all three weapons just fine. It doesn't. You can always. That's why we recessed it. You can always massage the plastic around the magnet so that it fits better. We'll see how it happens after it dries. So now is this dried enough, and it actually fits all three weapons just fine. This clips right on. You didn't see that, did you? There we go. There's the last cannon. Assault cannon. Plasma cannon. Stop doing that. So now we can finally get a fully magnetized turret. It'll just be swapped off. Take off the weapons, take off the shield things. Yeah, that was funny. Extra magnet stuck in there. So let's swap over to the assault cannons. There we go. Assault cannons. So that completes Stormraven Part 2. Or Magnetizing Stormraven Part 2, the turret, which is now fully magnetized for all three weapon options. Thanks for watching.